Now let's go to a high-level overview of the products that Oracle has related to data science and machine learning. First of all, in this workshop we're focusing on custom development of machine learning processes. So this is visible here on the right-hand side. Let's call this category Ready to Build. This includes the platforms to prepare data and train your own models, but also all other infrastructure that may be required, such as storage, databases, integration, model deployment. But it's good to also be aware of the other places where Oracle incorporates machine learning in their products. On the left there's what we call Ready to Go, and this is all about our SaaS products. So think about business applications for example, HCM, CRM, SCM, etc. The machine learning models are already built into these apps as part of all kinds of business processes. For example, in HCM, there's a pre-built machine learning process that helps you select the best candidates, and in SCM, there's machine learning that predicts demand. And the users of these applications, they don't deal with machine learning at all. In fact, they may not even realize it's there. It just works and it's part of the application's functionality. And Ready to Work is what we call the machine learning that's part of our own PaaS and IaaS products, with the goal of automating as much of it as possible. So maybe the best example of this is the autonomous database, where things like monitoring and tuning the database are automated with machine learning. And again, also in this category, the machine learning is mostly hidden away for the users of these products. It just works under the hood. But as mentioned, this workshop is all about building your own machine learning, so let's zoom in on the Ready to Build category. It's Oracle's vision to provide one single architecture that lets you get value out of data in any way. And data science and machine learning are one way, but business analytics and, for example, applications are also a way of getting value out of data. This one architecture runs on Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, and you know now that data science initiatives are often very experimental. This means you are likely to have different requirements over time as it comes to sizing, for example for compute and memory size. And cloud fits very well with that experimental nature. It's not uncommon for training of models to be a much heavier job than the actual inference once a model is deployed. And with a cloud approach you will have that flexibility that you need to adapt to that. So this single cloud platform also means that you can quickly try out completely different approaches and products to solve the problem at hand. On the left in this picture we start with the raw data sources that we want to use. You see how that data is picked up through ELT tools and stored in the most suitable place. That could be nicely structured data in, for example, an autonomous database. And alternative, you could store things like images, audio and video on object storage for, let's say, a data lake approach. So again, this allows us to govern the data that's used for data science because it's all in a central place in our platform. You also see a service called Data Catalog here, and I mentioned earlier that it can be a challenge for data scientists to find the relevant data for their problems. The Data Catalog is a service that lets organizations create a repository of all data that they have available, be it in databases, object storage, or any other data source. And the vision is that this will allow a data scientist to easily discover which datasets are available. On the right side we see the ways that we interact with that data, where the actual insights and value come from. So here you see the data science service, you see analytics, which I'll speak about in a second. And on the right you also see the applications that are consuming the results of our machine learning models once they're in production. There are a lot of products and services in this picture, but let's first start with those products that allow you to actually create machine learning models. So let's say the tools that the data scientists will use most of all. There are actually a few choices here, and I'll mention them very shortly and then we'll dive into each of them in a bit more detail. First of all, the data science service is a workbench for an open source approach with Python and its machine learning libraries. The focus of this service is on team collaboration. You have to see this as an environment that streamlines the entire data science process. Machine learning on Oracle data platforms are our products that allow you to offload machine learning to the data platform, in particular to our database. So the training and applying of models runs inside of the database and not on, let's say, normal compute instances. Thirdly, for customers that prefer their own machine learning tools, they can bring whatever they have and run it on Oracle's infrastructure. And fourthly, a very different approach, where the first three options here are for the expert data scientist. The fourth option, Oracle Analytics, is aimed at the business user. Now let's dive a little bit deeper into each of these. The data science service is a central workbench focused on collaboration. As I mentioned earlier, there's an enormous community behind machine learning with Python, and many customers want to take advantage of not just the current possibilities with Python machine learning, but also the speed of innovation that's taking place in this world. What are the challenges that this service addresses? You see that a lot of data scientist teams are working on local Python environments and they're struggling to work together efficiently. The data science service is a central workbench. Development is done with notebooks, and that makes it easy to document, to share, and to version manage all the code. It's easy to reuse what others have done. And clearly also an advantage of running on OCI is this easy access to flexible compute power. And another advantage of OCI is that data scientists can be given secure access to the governed data sources on the cloud. And I mentioned the autonomous database and object storage already before. This removes that risk that we had before of datasets flying around on different local systems. And last of all, I mentioned the importance of deploying models and also the necessity of continuous evaluation and tracking of these models. And the data science service comes with a special model catalog where you can track which version of a model is in production. And the vision here is to already start tracking models before they even get to production through their whole life cycle, including keeping track of code and data have been used to train them. And that can be important, for example, when you need to explain why a model took a certain decision. Apart from that, data science comes with AutoML, and what this does is that it can automate the data science process for a very big part. The problem that's being addressed here is that even for experienced data scientists, it can be challenging to deliver high-performing models quickly. There are just so many steps that need their attention. You'll see later on that the data scientist has to profile the data, choose what input data is relevant, what isn't. They also have to choose from a large amount of possible algorithms, and they have to tune those algorithms with the exact right values for hyperparameters. All of this means that there is a very large search space for a data scientist to go through to find that optimal configuration. And that simply takes time. Or even worse, it might mean that he or she doesn't even find that optimal solution. AutoML changes all of this by automating the most important steps. It can automatically profile and prepare data. It can automatically choose which features are valuable and which should be discarded. It can automate the selection of the best algorithm, and it will even optimize those hyperparameters of the models automatically. So you can imagine the productivity gain that this can result in. Even with AutoML, we still need the domain knowledge of the data scientist. Some complexity will of course always remain, but a lot of the plumbing and the repetitive work is done for you already, so you can reach that point of an optimal model just much faster. And all of this functionality is done through a special Python library that comes with the data science service called ADS. By the way, in our first two labs, we're not going to use this library yet. We believe it's important that you first learn to work with the common Python packages for machine learning. Now let's come to the Oracle machine learning approach. And OML lets you train and run models in the data management platform. In this workshop, we'll focus on OML in the database, even though there's also technology for big data platforms here. At the center of OML are 30+ algorithms that have been implemented inside of the database. And why would you want to run machine learning in the database? Well, if you have large quantities of data in a database, it can be difficult to move it to a special machine learning tier just to be able to train on it. It can be just very convenient to leave the data where it is. And in certain circumstances, it can also lead to higher performance. We all know how databases are optimized to run very fast. And there are things like indexes, cache, in-memory optimizations, all to run very fast queries. Now, the machine learning algorithms in the database have also been optimized for speed through these same capabilities that the database already had. And again, we're going to talk more on this in depth in the special lab on this topic. The third approach is for customers that already have their own machine learning tools, sometimes based on Python, sometimes on R, or maybe something completely different. And typically in this situation, people are often just looking for the most cost-effective and the most user-friendly infrastructure to run those tools on. So what they can do is simply take what they have and run it on OCI. And we also work together with several partners such as NVIDIA and H2O.ai with pre-built VMs. Okay, so far we talked about the expert data scientist that has had a solid training and that can program in things like Python or SQL. But a much heard complaint here is that there are only so few people around that have those skills. Oracle is addressing that issue with Oracle's analytics platform, because Oracle Analytics Cloud aims to bring machine learning to the business user. The idea here has been to hide as much of the technical complexity that's involved with machine learning as possible. A lot of attention here has been given to ease of use. With a few clicks, users can add things like forecasting, or they can train their own models using some of the most common machine learning algorithms. Just to be clear, a business user may not be able to reach the same level of complexity or model accuracy as what a well-trained data scientist can do with, for example, the data science service. But for a number of less advanced use cases, this user-friendly approach to machine learning can be enough. And the enormous benefit here is that it can lead to much wider adoption of machine learning. Just consider the amount of business users or business analysts versus expert data scientists. Coming back to the cloud platform, there are a few more important products to highlight. And first of all, inside of the Oracle database, there's another technology that can be of a particular interest for data scientists. You may be aware of the concept of graph databases. A graph database uses a different approach for representing data than the relational databases that most of us are used to. And the link with machine learning here is that by focusing on the relationships in data, graph can be an alternative way for doing anomaly detection. And we can even combine the power of graph and machine learning to reach even higher accuracy. Then there are several services here that are related to doing data science with big data or really working with very large scale data sets. And although we're not going to focus on that in this workshop, let me just talk about them shortly for completeness. Data flow is in essence about running jobs on big data, and in particular on object storage, although it could be other data sources as well. In the big data world, there's a technology called Spark that's more and more becoming the standard for processing at scale. And the vision here is that the data science service will be able to submit these Spark jobs with data flow for things like data preparation and machine learning model training, always in the context of very large data sets. And lastly, the big data service is a managed Cloudera infrastructure on Oracle Cloud. The vision is for the data science service to be able to pick up data from BDS and use it as input in the machine learning process. Now let's come to some conclusions. You've seen very briefly 4 ways in which data scientists and even business users can build machine learning models. It's good to have that flexibility to be able to choose the best approach for your situation. And now I'll mention a few points for you to consider if you have to make a choice between these. So first of all, you want to ask yourself what kind of data you want to train on. And maybe also where it's stored at the moment. Is it nicely structured? Would it fit into database tables? Or is it something different, like image, audio and video. You also want to consider whether the open source approach is important to you and what kind of skill sets do you have in-house. Do you have experienced data scientists that are already working with Python, but you just want them to work more efficient as a team? Or do you have a team of database experts that are looking to make their first steps with machine learning? Or would you like to enable your business users with predictive capabilities instead? So it depends. Now, at the minimum, you could already start with machine learning with just one of the products that I mentioned here. A different way of looking at this is that you can mix and match and use the best product for each task. So for example, take a look at this architecture. Here we see that the data science service can use data from both the autonomous database and object storage for training. Now you could use the database here just for storage, but you could also apply part of the machine learning already directly with AutoML inside of the database. And then continue with the second part of the pipeline with the data science service. Or take this architecture with analytics also included. Imagine that you have an expert data scientist that actually uses the data preparation of Oracle Analytics in a visual way, and he or she can then continue with the process and build the model using the data science service to have fine control over the algorithm and its hyperparameters. So I hope this has given you an idea of what data science is and the cloud platform that Oracle offers.
What you've just seen is just a sneak preview, a small part of the workshop. If you'd like to see all of it and if you'd like to get some hands-on experience yourself, then please join us for the next live edition of this workshop, which consists of 2 half days, so 8 hours in total. Just follow this link to see when that is happening and register for this free event. Hope to see you there. Bye!